My name is Jean Crane, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor at Care to Change Counseling in Avon, and we also have an office in Brownsburg. And I'm really excited and grateful to be able to be with you today and talk to you about this important topic of anxiety. This is something that is happening. The prevalence rate is growing these days. There are just so many reasons why it is a struggle in life and culture in our global world these days. And so anxiety is on the rise, and we are talking to a lot of clients who come in about anxiety. And I'm actually really glad I get to work with clients who come in who are struggling with anxiety, because I have seen that there are some good things that people can learn and start to do that can really help. And I think all of us, whether you have a diagnosable anxiety disorder or just a human being, we have all experienced the symptoms of anxiety before. In fact, our God made our bodies to have symptoms of anxiety when we're in a stressful situation. And the point of having those symptoms is to help us. So back in the old days, if you were running away from a wolf, obviously that's a stressful situation. And so your body is designed to be able to run fast and to be on mission to get out of there. And so your heart starts beating faster. You have this adrenaline rush and cortisol, and you're able to run faster than you would normally be able to run because of the fact that's how God designed our bodies. Now, those bodies were designed for stressful situations, but not to live in that kind of stressful situation. And that's what we would call toxic stress. And sometimes that toxic stress can lead to an anxiety disorder, and it definitely can lead to a lot of things. And as science progresses, we're learning a lot more about how it can impact the body. It obviously is impacting emotions. It can impact identity, can impact for children and teenagers reaching these developmental tasks that they need to reach in order to grow into maturity. It can impact relationships. So anxiety is an important thing to address for so many reasons. So I'm grateful that you're tuning in today to think a little bit more about this topic. So one question that we get asked a lot is, what are the symptoms of anxiety? And most of us, again, you think about a stressful situation. I always talk about, if you're walking along the edge of the Grand Canyon, you're probably experiencing some stress, because if you accidentally trip, you could fall and that would not be good. And so what are those symptoms that your body starts to experience if you were walking along the edge? And for me, even when I'm talking about it, I can kind of start to feel that when I think about, what would that really be like? I did go on a trip a couple of years ago with some of my friends, and we went over to the very edge, and there was nothing there, just straight down. And so, your hands start getting a little bit clammy, your heart starts beating faster, you're maybe not noticing it, but your breath might be a little bit shorter. You start to feel a bit of a heaviness in your chest, maybe. Some people, these risk takers, can maybe be fine with that. But for me, I start to feel those symptoms, and those are the physical symptoms of anxiety. The other thing is sometimes your brain gets on a loop. So if you're on the edge of the Grand Canyon, you might think, what if I fall? What if I fall? What if I fall? And it's really hard to think anything else except what if I fall? And that what if I fall message is then translating into your brain, and your brain is saying, send an alert to the whole body, because we got to be really careful right now. And that's that adrenaline, the cortisol, some of those chemicals that come into your body when you're experiencing stress. So again, if somebody is living with anxiety, and this is something that they experience a lot, maybe every single day, maybe they wake up this way, maybe they go to bed this way, and just so hard. We would call that generalized anxiety disorder, where they're feeling those symptoms a lot. And so you can imagine, when you feel that way, you kind of go through this moment, your body has this rush of energy, and then you feel depleted afterwards. Maybe you go back, have some lunch, and you like breathing and, okay, I'm going to be okay. That's what our bodies were made to do. But if you're living in that all the time, it can be physically toxic and exhausting to your body to live that way. So again, what causes anxiety? Another question that we get asked a lot. We're still trying to fully understand everything about what causes it, but we do know some things. One thing is that you might just genetically be predispositioned towards anxiety. If people in your family and your bloodline somewhere have had anxiety, it is something that correlates to being passed down. And that could happen kind of on two levels. One, just the genetics, and then two, the environment that you grew up in. So if you grew up with one of your parents or somebody in your household who experienced anxiety, you might have kind of caught that. You would have gotten that because environmentally you would be programmed, you would see that. Maybe they would be talking about it a lot or feeling worried all the time, or you're noticing those physical symptoms that they are expressing through their body. So there's many different causes, could be genetics, could be environment. Also, toxic stress can cause an anxiety disorder. So if you grew up in a situation where you had these things we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, basically childhood trauma can really translate into anxiety. And that makes sense to us because if you think about, you were a child and maybe it was unsafe where you lived, maybe there was substance abuse in the home, domestic violence, maybe you were a survivor of sexual abuse or physical abuse or verbal abuse, or your parent was incarcerated, or poverty. All of those things, if you think about it, that child is growing up kind of being hyper vigilant. Their body is constantly on alert, like, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be okay? Will somebody take care of me? And so that's another factor that can really influence somebody who is struggling with anxiety. We also know that things you might never think of, like when your mom was pregnant with you, if she was under great duress, like going through a really difficult time, sometimes those stress hormones can come through in the pregnancy. And also if in delivery there was struggles, or you had to be taken away from your mom at birth, or if you had physical things, you had to be in the NICU for a long period of time, or if you were in and out of hospitals as a young child, all of those things can contribute to it. And most of the time, those aren't things that you can control. So please hear me say this. If you are struggling with anxiety, this isn't something to beat yourself up over. It is not your fault. Nobody would choose to have anxiety, but with help and treatment, you can get better. There are definitely some things that you can do that can help. So number one thing I would say, if you feel like, I think I fit the characteristics of having an anxiety disorder, that might be something that helps you see that seeing a professional counselor could be helpful. Today, we're going to really gloss over quickly some things that can be done, but I think it's an important thing to have an assessment done by a professional who can really look at the whole picture with you and help you as you move forward. What I try to tell the people who come in and work with me is that if we can come up with a safety plan for you, something that helps you feel like, okay, if I start to have these symptoms, I know what I can do. Having that safety plan, just having the safety plan, not even working it, is one way that helps calm your brain down already to say, okay, I have a plan. And so you don't have to have anxiety about having anxiety or worry about anxiety, but instead you can know, like, all right, I've got a plan in place. So that's one thing I really like to do with people who come in to see me, is to set up a plan to say, let's think about you and what works best with you, because there are so many ideas for working with anxiety and coping skills and strategies. There's ways to physically relax. There's cognitive strategies about what to think about and how to really be careful about what you dwell on. There's spiritual things that you can do. Obviously, medication is also another route that when it comes to helping somebody through anxiety, they've noted in science and the data that both behavioral health therapy, like counseling, what we do, and medication together can be very significant in helping somebody. So again, there's a bunch of symptoms. There's some causes. We're still trying to determine everything about what causes it. But as far as the treatment, let's talk about what we might do if you were to come in, or just some tips and ideas for you if you just have, some people are diagnosable with an anxiety disorder and some people just struggle with it sometimes. We all do. I know I do sometimes. So these tips that we'll talk about today can be helpful no matter where you are across the spectrum of anxiety. So the first thing, and you have probably heard this spoken about a lot during these past years, is self-care. And self-care is actually paying attention to your body and noticing your body and taking good care of it. And this is really important when it comes to anxiety, is noticing. So a lot of times you might go through your day, be experiencing anxiety, but not even being paying attention because you have all of these other things that you're doing, whether you're a student in school and you have to focus on your work, or whether you're a parent like me or a person who works and you just have to get stuff done and you're not paying attention. And so that whole day, there's all kinds of chemicals, there's so much going on inside your body that's exhausting. And over time, that can be really dangerous. And so it's important to pay attention to your body and to say, I'm going to take good care of myself. One of the best things that we can tell somebody to do behaviorally when wanting to decrease those levels of anxiety is exercise. I know it's hard to get into the habit of it and to keep in a routine of it, but it is certainly effective in helping with anxiety on so many levels. It's a good release of energy. It also helps people sleep better. It helps get your muscles moving, your body moving. So exercise, finding a plan. And what I would say to you, if you don't like to exercise, is that's okay. Let's just find something that you don't hate. So don't do the worst thing. If you hate running, don't feel like you have to just start running, training for a marathon, but instead find something. Maybe you like to swim. You can swim really slowly at the Y. Or maybe, you like, one of my clients told me yesterday she likes jazzercise. I didn't even know that was still around, but that's awesome. So to her, it's like dancing, or even Just Dance on the Wii video games. Just getting your body moving is an important part in helping take care of yourself and helping reduce anxiety. The other thing is nutrition. And for those, I've learned a lot over the years. I'm not trained in nutrition, but from nutritionists that I have worked with, that our blood sugar impacts how we feel. And so if we're careful to eat things that don't impact our blood sugar too much, like eating in balance, making sure that we're taking in protein and not just simple carbs or sugar, but having things in balance, then that can help, because when your blood sugar goes up or goes way down, either of those can impact your body and make it feel even more anxious, more jittery, or more exhausted. So nutrition is really important, and fueling your body with those good things can help. Also sleep. And sleep can also be correlated with your caffeine intake. I love coffee. I love Starbucks. So I know it can impact my sleep as well. But getting sleep is really important for emotional regulation the next day. As we all know, on those days when we haven't gotten a good night's sleep for whatever reason, it's just really hard the next day to stay focused and to feel good inside. And so getting to bed on time, just getting a regular nighttime routine where you say, I'm going to go to bed at this time, try to get up at this time and get myself enough sleep. And that's for people who sleep well. I do understand that people with anxiety also can struggle with sleeping. Even if they're going to bed at the right time, it can be really hard to stay asleep. So a lot of times they'll tell me that they can't shut their brain down. It just takes a long time. And maybe that's the first time during the day that they've quieted themselves. And all of a sudden, that's when their brain just starts going, and you have intrusive thoughts, racing thoughts, and perseverating on things, what ifing about the future, thinking about all the negative things that could happen. So I do understand that can be a real struggle, not just getting to bed on time, but then also staying asleep, or for some people, waking up in the middle of the night. So there are so many good resources that people can try when it comes to sleep, including melatonin, including just deep breathing or relaxation strategies that they can learn before they go to bed. So again, coming into counseling or looking those up, you can feel free to look up strategies for sleeping. And I know there are so many good things that are out there on the internet that might be helpful for you when it comes to self-care and when it comes to sleep. So number one thing is taking care of yourself, noticing your body and trying to do good things to take care of your body. Number two, I want to talk about is cognitive, and that just means what we think about. So it's really important to be careful with what we think about. So if I were to say to you, like, hey, maybe hopefully you like trips. I like traveling. So if I was to say, hey, we're going to give you a cruise, and I want you to think about where would you want to go? What would it be like on the beach to all those places, especially right now, we're in the dead of winter. You might be listening to this when it's warmer, but right now it's cold and it would be so nice to go somewhere warm. So if you start thinking about the beach and the Caribbean and maybe snorkeling and the beautiful fish and the palm trees, and do you even notice once you start picturing those things, how your body just starts to feel a little bit better? So what you think about matters. If you think about that versus thinking about something concerning. Whenever maybe you watch the news and you hear about this or that story, what if this were to happen to my kids? What if this were to happen to my husband or to me? What if a global pandemic? What if? There's so many what ifs, and we absolutely cannot control all of the things that are happening. And so if we're constantly thinking about those negative what ifs, that gets our body amped up. It causes our brain to send that danger message to our whole body, and those chemicals start coming, even though we might not be living in it. So if you say, I noticed for me, sometimes on the news, the very first thing that they show is something that happened, some kind of harmful thing that was done to a child. And I have 4 kids. And so if I start thinking about that and then I start going into what ifing, it's almost like my body is experiencing that thing that didn't happen. I'm just thinking about it, but it's experiencing it. So my heart rate can go up and all of those things can happen. So what we think about really impacts our body. And if you're a person of faith, in the Bible, it says, take captive your thoughts. And it's kind of the same thing as we've learned in psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy is. And that means that you are careful with what you think about, because what you think about impacts your feelings, and what you feel impacts your choices. So a couple strategies that I teach people when it comes to thinking differently. One is that if you start to go into that what ifing, if you start thinking about all the negative things that could happen, the minute you notice it, you'll probably notice it in your body first. So you might feel like you got punched in the gut, or your wind got taken out of your sails. The minute you notice it, check back in with your head. What was it that I was thinking about? And then if you can, switch into something like gratefulness. So thinking deeply about 10 things that you're grateful for, or something like math, where you're doing Sudoku, or you're doing subtraction in your head that's hard. So maybe 100 minus 7, minus 7, minus 7, something that takes enough energy, effort for your brain so that it gets out of the old what ifing and into something else. Or putting some music on and belting that music out, paying attention to those words, so that you're getting your mind away from the old what ifing and again into something else that would be more beneficial. The math is really a distraction technique, but it also helps your brain so that the logical side of your brain kind of goes back online. So if you're having trouble, if you're a student, you're having trouble in school because you have test anxiety. So the minute you walk into a test, you're feeling everything in your body and your brain just isn't working quite as well as it usually does. That's a great strategy to start doing math when you're walking from the class to the next one that you'll be going to. Already start doing math so that your brain is getting that logical side back online so that you're ready for that test that you'll be taking. So self-care, being careful with what you think about. The next one is learning regulation strategies. So these are specific techniques that you can use to help bring your heart rate down, to help bring the racing thoughts, the breathing, being short, bring it back down. And the first thing that you can do, and the most important fundamental thing you can do, is breathe. And I'm sure if you go to counseling anywhere, that's probably the first thing that a counselor will teach you to do, is learn what works for you when it comes to deep breathing. There are all kinds of great ways. We have a person who works at Care to Change with us. Her name is Ginger Boyce, and she really helps with this. And she's done some seminars for us where we learn there's breathing in out of your right nostril and or in out of your left nostril, or square breathing or starfish breathing, breathing where you count in and let it go on a count out. So there's lots of different ideas, and everyone can kind of find what works best for them. For me, I like square breathing, and that's where I just stop and I take a deep breath in, and while I'm painting a square on my hand, so I'm breathing in and holding it in, and then breathing out and holding it out. And if you go around that square enough times, it can bring that heart rate down, and it can help slow everything down, and you will feel more regulated just from that breathing. You can also learn to do progressive muscle relaxation, where you're squeezing and holding muscles. There's stretching. There's all kinds of different strategies that you can learn to regulate and help bring down that heart rate and the breathing that can happen. So for anyone who is noticing their body starting to amp up, you can always take a break and go to the bathroom. And when you're sitting in that stall, you don't even have to be going to the bathroom. You can just use those regulation strategies that you've learned. And again, we are happy to have you come in. And if you wanted to meet with one of us as counselors, we can definitely work with you on learning those so that you have something that you can do. So then again, your brain feels like it has a safety plan. I don't have to worry about having an anxiety attack in class, because if I do, I can just ask my teacher to take a break. I can go into the bathroom and I can use some of these strategies that I know. And just knowing that helps you. The next one is relationship support. And I just want to emphasize the power of connection when it comes to dealing with anxiety. There's really something scientifically called co-regulating. And that means that when you sit face to face with somebody who's safe and you look them in the eye and you two are together in each other's presence, your heart rate literally goes down and you literally feel a sense of peace. This happens with animals too. So a lot of people have pets like dogs or working with horses. Those are two animal species for sure that can help bring that heart rate down and help you to feel more regulated. But let's talk about people. People are so important. Having support systems, you can't do it alone. You will not be able to heal from anxiety just by yourself. I really believe that relationships with other people, being able to call someone, connect with them, talk to them, get together with them, being safe in their presence, being able to share and receive their support and their encouragement can be very, very important when it comes to anxiety reduction. So if you're married and you have a spouse, it's great for them to learn about anxiety, even if they don't have it. What are the things that they can do to be your partner in those moments when it's really hard? And the last tip, very most important tip I want to share with you is the power of faith. I'm a believer, a follower of Jesus, and a person who believes in God's word. And I have found his word to be so crucial in helping me in times of anxiety. We know that we have a God who is near to us. There's one of my favorite passages, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And I love that. But guess what the verse before that is? It reminds us, it says, God is near. And his presence is so important. So when it says, do not be anxious, I don't feel like they're saying you're a sinner if you have anxiety. I think what this passage is saying is like, let's remember together that God is with us. He is near to us, and we can talk to him about these things that we're worried about. I just don't know how anyone could go through life as a human and not have worry at some point. God's saying, I'm with you, I care about you, and you can present your request to me with thanksgiving, kind of going back to that gratefulness thing that we were talking about earlier. And I care and I'm listening and I'm intervening. Now, does God always answer the way that we want him to? No. Sometimes anxiety continues, even when we're talking to him about things, even when we're asking him to take it away. But he is with us in the middle of it. And I just want you to remember that God is near. You can always pray and you can always talk to him about anything that comes up for you. So I know this was really quick. We don't have a ton of time to talk through everything about anxiety, but I'm thankful for these few moments where we could share a few things. We are talking about anxiety a lot on our website, so please come to our website, caretochange.org, follow us on social media. We post a lot of things about all kinds of issues on our social media. We also have a new podcast that we've started, and we're very excited about that. So we'd love to see you, and feel free to call us if you feel like this is something that you'd like to get some extra support with. We would love to have you come in and meet with one of us. We have a great team of professionals here, and we would all love to work with you. So thank you. Have a great day.